like you to think for a minute about conversations that you may be engaging, maybe not be engaging, that are risky. This is the third practice. What's the first sentence of a conversation that will require courage? David White, I worked with David White for a while, and he used to have a practice that he would ask, what's the first line of a poem you don't have the courage to complete? So you might think about what's the first opening statement of a conversation you may not have the courage to engage. And how would you launch that in a great way? Think about that for a moment. Again, another disorienting, powerful question. I'm not going to have you share that, partly for time and partly because it involves another person, perhaps. So these are three additional practices that you can add to this notion of how do we cultivate consciousness and wisdom at work. I think together, taken together, they're extraordinarily powerful at booting up this creative mind. This is the heart of creative mind, the self-authoring, vision-focused, self-aware, being able to take a perspective on my doubts and fears and the old self. That's vintage creative mind. And the journey doesn't stop there. As Jennifer talked about, a few people show up at this other, where this other guy stands, right? Integral mind. And so I want to just talk a little bit about how that unfolds. We start from this reactive to creative, from fear to passion to compassion. And so greater complexity boots up here. This is the process of transformation here between creative and integral is the same work at some level. I work the ascending current, I work the descending current. The ascending current takes us into larger vision, systemic vision, wholes rather than parts. And so my perspective expands. I'm now the servant leader, architect of the larger system and the interdependent welfare, and how my vision, which I was focused on in creative mind, is now interdependently connected with the welfare of the whole, and that's how I'm leading now. And to do that requires holding lots of conflict, huge polarities, discrepancies, complexities. And the reason that we can do that with real mastery, creating new possibilities, is because something else has happened in the self. The self has gone through yet another metamorphosis. The descending current opens into the shadow. This is fierce work. I meet the opposite half of myself. Jekyll meets Hyde. Bob, the consultant who's out there, talking about high empowerment and involvement workplaces, is now running his own business, and he meets his inner controller. The part of him that says, no friggin' way am I letting go to the likes of them. You got to be kidding. This is where the Israeli discovers their inner Palestinian. And it's not a meeting of enemies. It's not a meeting of opposition, of pushing away. It's a meeting of compassion, tolerance, acceptance. Oh, you're in me. I have all these disparate parts. I'm not this authentic visionary self solely. I have completely opposite parts in me that want nothing to do with my vision, frankly. And Rilke writes about what happens here in a poem called Rest Between Two Notes. He says, I am the rest between two notes which are somehow always in discord. I am the rest between two notes which are somehow always in discord because death's note wants to climb over, but in the interval, reconciled, they stand there trembling and the song goes on beautiful. This is the integral self, holding the conflict, that I think is out there is actually in me. The unresolvedness that's out there is unresolvedness in me. And so I can meet the conflict and the complexity without judgment. I actually meet it with tolerance, with compassion, with the ability to hold the space open so higher order possibility can emerge. Real dialogue can take place. I am the rest between two notes which are somehow always in discord, because you hear the compassion in that line? Always in discord. You'll be forever unfinished. Get over it. One time got really clear. I'm going to die an imperfect being. I am the rest between two notes, which are somehow always in discord because Death Note wants to climb over. But in the dark interval, reconciled. This is the key word. Reconciled. Forgiven. Reconciled. They stand there trembling in the song